Rolling.
Greg, you got speed?
Camera speed.
Great. All right, here we go, doing a virtual interview. Caraline, first of all, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you taking a moment to talk to us in this crazy COVID world of virtual interviews. Have you ever done a virtual interview?
No, this is my first one.
Mine too. This is actually a little bit different for us, but we're excited to do this. The biggest reason I wanted to chat with you a little bit was to learn a little bit about how your Outside Collab event went. It was a hybrid meeting. You had presenters live, but you had people, watching and participating remotely. Tell me just a little bit about the event and how it went for you.
Sure. So, Outside Collab, we were going to have an in-person 2-day event back in April. And, February rolls around and like many people, we had to pivot. And so at first we pushed it out to October because we were convinced that COVID would be over by then and we would be good. Well, come, July and August, and we realized this isn't going anywhere and we need to change again. And so it was at that point that we made the call to turn over into an online only event. And, we were nervous because the idea behind Outside Collab was it was not supposed to be your typical conference. It was supposed to be unique and really encourage collaborations and conversations with individuals. And we were nervous that on a virtual platform it would be too difficult to accomplish this. But to our surprise, we feel it worked really well. And going over from an in-person event over 2 days with tours and workshops to only being online in 1 day, we didn't know too how many people would participate, but we had a really high participation rate, much higher than we could have in person, because in person we were limited by our venue. And having it online and virtual allowed us to also reach out to people beyond our target audience. We were mainly targeting people in the state of Florida, but others outside of the state of Florida caught on to what we were doing and they were curious. And so we had people from across the nation, which we normally would not have had if we had done an in-person event.
That's really interesting. You're I think the third person who's told me that we've worked with that their participation actually exceeded their expectations. And I find that really interesting. What do you think was the cause of that? That people just didn't have to travel so it was easier? Or that because you were able to expand the geographic footprint? Or what's your take on the driver of that?
Sure. Originally we had a venue that could only seat so many people, so that automatically limited us to the number of tickets, and we were anticipating selling out, but that was only about 200 people we could have brought in. And so with the virtual, it's unlimited. We could have had thousands of people and still been able to do it. So I think the mixture of people not having to travel in would have definitely helped, especially for those out of state who didn't want to invest that kind of time and money to come in for it. But I also think that we were able to just reach people who also, especially during this time, maybe who aren't able to travel or as open to traveling with everything that's going on.
Tell me a little bit about the production process, your process of picking a production partner. What were the things that were important to you?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So we've done some live events and we've produced it all in-house, but it's only been with our employees who we know can be very forgiving if anything goes wrong. And so with this and with the complexities of multiple speakers and so many people being live, we knew we would have to hire out for it. So we reached out to maybe about 10 different production companies and got quotes to start, and just did our general research online. And then we picked about 4 or 5 to interview and talk to. And what really stood out for us about Omni was that you guys were very responsive to us, and you asked us some good questions that we had not thought about. And so for us, that showed that you all were very thorough, and that we wouldn't have to figure everything out, because there was a lot of newness for us with this setup and it being unique for us. So we interviewed and then we narrowed down, and what we really liked with you guys is the questions you asked. We liked that you were responsive, that you were willing to come out and do a site visit once or twice or 3 times. I'm not sure how many times you ended up coming out, but to us that meant a lot because it showed that you were invested in our event and you cared about the success of our event. And of course we looked up reviews online and watched videos on websites, and we went through that whole process. But we definitely knew we needed a partner that cared about the success of our event. It wasn't just another check off their list.
Thank you for that. Let's fast forward to the day of the event. We get in there, we get set up, and it's getting ready to start. Tell me a little bit about just what you were thinking and feeling that morning as things were getting set up and we're approaching liftoff.
Well, I plan a lot of events, and the golden rule is something's going to go wrong, and you just gotta be prepared and have the mind space for it. And I actually, going in, I was like, okay, what's going to go wrong? There's going through my head all the scenarios, and of course my main one was the internet's not going to work, or maybe the production company doesn't show up. You never know. And so but really we walked away at the end of the event and we were like, wow, there was no major issue, and it's pretty incredible, especially for a brand new event for us, at an off-site location with all these different variables. And I guess the most stressful part was probably when one of our speakers just showed up late and only a few minutes before we went live. But other than that, I mean, things seemed to pretty much go off without a hitch.
One of the things that I recall that did kind of go down was the internet service at the facility actually started to fail.
So during the planning process, Omni had brought up the idea of having a backup internet service. And for me in planning events, knowing things always go wrong, I immediately knew I wanted to do it, and I brought it to the committee's attention. And they questioned it. They said, are you sure that's necessary? And I told them, I said, I look at it as our insurance policy. And, I am so thankful that we had that insurance policy, because with the internet going in and out at the venue, this gave us the opportunity to maybe only have a couple seconds where we had any lapse in the event. And it was only in the very beginning, and then, towards the end, things became a lot more smooth, and it seemed to work out very well. So I'm very thankful that we made that decision.
Very good. Tell me a little bit about the feedback. What you're thinking about doing this thing live, and then you had to kind of like you said, pivot into this virtual hybrid event. What kind of feedback did you get from attendees and presenters?
We got a lot of really great feedback, and which is always something you want at the end of an event. We had attendees who reached out to us and really complimented the event. They complimented the quality of the production. They complimented the quality of the program and the speakers, how smooth everything went, that it really had a professional appearance. I know I've attended a lot of webinars and Zoom meetings online that last minute went from a conference to an online event, and sometimes it's just an individual's webcam and it's not maybe as professional or polished. You might not be able to hear them that well, or you're dealing with all these different internet connections, or they're sharing their screen, they forget how to do it. So by taking that whole part out and keeping it very streamlined and sleek, there were less distractions, and people were able to focus on the content rather than on everything else that's going on. And so we sent out a survey right after the event, and we got some really great feedback. Of course, we had some people who wished they could have met in person. We're looking at different ways we could do that in small groups and in doing tours around the state of Florida. But this, I think, was a really great opportunity for us to still have the conference reach as many people as we did. And we did get some comments too that we didn't reach enough people, that they had friends who hadn't heard about it. So that also gave us the opportunity to learn that we need to find ways to continue to get the word out about this initiative.
Very good. Now, you used a platform called Whova, if I recall. Tell me about your experience with that platform, you know, because it's not just streaming it onto the internet. You have to have an interface and a platform by which your participants interact and with each other and with the presenters or listen to the presenters. Tell me about that platform and your impression of it, why you chose it, what was its strength?
Sure. We originally chose Whova when we were going to do an in-person event because you know, the idea behind this conference is that we wanted everyone to collaborate, that, you know, there's only so much you can do in a day or two of meeting and talking about things, but it's the next steps. It's after that and how people can talk to each other, stay in contact. And so we had picked out Whova for that reason, that there were a lot of great features to work with an in-person conference. But then when we switched to an online only conference, we looked at Whova again and said, is this still the best option for us? And what we really liked about it is that there's a lot of different features in there for ongoing discussion boards. You can reach out to speakers and ask them questions directly. Individuals can post photos, and especially in an industry like ours, which is very visual, that was a big part of it. And so even after the event, we've had people who have been posting to discussion boards, talking to each other, and you know, we see it as an opportunity to stay in contact with attendees and with speakers, and to kind of create this platform, this collaborative per se, of people getting together and talking about this, because it's a lot of incremental steps that is going to move this forward, and it's going to make a big impact in the state of Florida. And so, you know, we can't accomplish it all in one day, and that's what's really great about that platform. And it allowed us to give access to sponsors to be able to showcase, you know, our top sponsors had pages on there where they could put a video and a description or a link out to their website. So it also allowed us to really highlight different areas of the conference beyond just the live event. Oh, and another thing that was really great about it was the chat feature, that, you know, we had some speakers who were chatting back and forth when they weren't on camera, or people could post and ask a question or share their thoughts and their statements, whereas with a conference you wouldn't be able to do that, or else everyone would be down looking at their phones. So it was a really easy way for people to also be able to speak up who maybe were just attending, with their thoughts and ideas.
Very good. Last question for you. What's next for this event? Do you anticipate doing this excuse me, live? Do you anticipate maybe another virtual, maybe a hybrid? Where's your head, at least right now?
You know, we're not really sure what the future of this event is going to be, if it's going to move to an in-person event or if it's going to stay online, but we definitely have the idea that a virtual event is possible beyond COVID, beyond social distancing. This still is a potential platform for us to use to be able to reach people, collaborate with people, and be able to have an even broader audience. And so I anticipate we'll probably do some hybrid events in the future, and look into different ideas or options with tours or workshops or small conferences, shorter conferences, all-day conferences. You know, we're really open to the possibilities.
Very good. And then lastly, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing right now. I'm back here at Omni Studios, and you're out on a tree farm, and we're having this live interview. So tell me a little bit about where you are and your setting.
So right now I'm here at our farm in Groveland, Florida. We have about 1,800 acres here, and here I am talking to Steve on a laptop over in his studio. And so, you know, this setup is very unique, and you know, in this unique setting here on the farm, with me here and Steve, you back at the office, we had to even here pivot a few times and figure out when Wi-Fi wasn't working out on the farm, and using a hotspot, and, you know, last minute making some changes to make sure that we could all get together and still conduct this interview.
That's fabulous. Any last thoughts about your experience of hosting a virtual conference and meeting, and just any last thoughts that you hadn't shared?
So, let me think. You know, doing outside collab online rather than in person was a big challenge for us. We do a lot of in-person events. We know what to anticipate and what to expect, but for an event like this, there was a lot of unknowns. And now walking away from doing it, it's a lot less intimidating to do something like this again, and to pick up another event, and to maybe bring another event to a virtual platform. If you would have asked me this last year, I would have thought, no, I don't think that'll be effective. I don't think people will pay attention, or they'll watch. They'll be on, Netflix or talking to their family members. They won't be paying attention. But, we had the opposite. We could see how engaged people were. We got the stats from Whova on how many people were chatting and messaging each other. And I think it really goes to show that we all are adaptable, and that there's a lot of possibilities in the future of trade shows, events, conferences, meetings.
And then really, this is, I swear, honest, this is the last thing. If you had the opportunity, and you do because you're here on this, doing this interview, what would you tell somebody, what advice would you give to somebody who is where you were 6 months ago, trying to figure out what to do and how to do it, and maybe they're a little bit terrified, like you said, that this might not be a good idea?
So my advice to someone who's in my shoes, who had to figure out what to do with an event, is to just try it. There's a lot of resources out there, and especially right now, people are very forgiving in these events and in these new times. And for me, my biggest advice would be, plan as if you're planning an in-person event. Think through all of those little details, and make sure that you have some really trusted partners on your side who whether it's the venue you use, or the production company you use, or the speakers. Just make sure that there's that clear communication, and that you all know how to collaborate together, so that if anything bad happens, you all have a plan and a direction to take.